Greetings and salutations, everyone. My name is Ange Kirikoff, and welcome to my YouTube channel. Today, we're talking about my Week 2 waiver wire targets going into the 2020 fantasy football season. On today's episode, we're going to be talking about a variety of different topics, starting off with injuries, news, Week 1 recap, and then waiver wire targets at the running back, wide receiver, tight end, quarterback, and defensive positions going into Week 2, so we could potentially set up ourselves for some success going into the future. Again, the waiver wire is another way that you can win your league. Again, like I mentioned during the preseason, offseason, winning draft day is a culmination of different things. Yes, you can set up yourself for some success throughout the rest of the season, but it does not automatically win you a championship. The moves that you make on the waiver wire on a weekly basis are going to make a huge difference. That's why we cover this so heavily here on the channel. So we'll talk about all of that. Now, before we begin, I want to thank you guys for your incredible support. Those of you who came out on Sunday morning, for the live stream, that was incredible. Thank you guys. I mean, I've never had 700 people in a chat before. It was absolute chaos, but I appreciate you guys coming out supporting the channel. For those of you who are looking to find extra content outside of the channel itself, you can go down in the description of the video, patreon.com/AngeKirikoff, where I create more content. All the information regarding that is down below. Outside of that, for those of you who are new, subscribe to the channel. We'll be making 2020 content for the entirety of the season. And let's get into it, shall we? Now, today's video will not be including any players on the Monday night game. Pittsburgh, the Giants, Denver, and the Titans. Those 4 teams will not be included. I had to record this before because, again, it takes a little bit of time to record, edit, upload, all that process. So we are not including that. If anything in that game kind of presents itself as an option in waiver wire, we will mention it tomorrow before these running back rankings. Outside of that, I think we're good to go. Let's talk about some injuries that took place this week and just kind of give it a little bit of an overview. Week 1 injuries always happen. And though Week 1 of the 2020 season was a little bit crazy and we expected injuries, the amount of injuries we got offensively was a bit of a surprise. So Marlon Mack, first and foremost, is out for the rest of the season, tore his Achilles. From what we saw yesterday, the emergence and usage of Nyheim Hines, who we'll talk about in a little bit as a running back waiver wire target, and then Jonathan Taylor, the rookie running back who will probably be the starter, who earlier today, in fact, was named the starting running back by Frank Reich, head coach of the Indianapolis Colts. Those two will be leading the backfield there from here on out. Unfortunately, Marlon Mack is injured and out, and that'll probably be the last time he plays for the Indianapolis Colts, but we'll just have to wait and see as his contract will probably run out. Moving on, we talk about our next player that we kind of wanted to mention as a player that's out for the rest of the season. Blake Jarwin, unfortunately, last night, Sunday Night Football, tore his ACL. He's gone. His backup is Dalton Schultz. Didn't really perform well. 4 targets, 1 reception. Not really a great performance there. I don't know what they're going to do at the tight end position. They might bring in some talent, but at this moment in time, Jarwin is out for the rest of the season. Le'Veon Bell sustained a hamstring injury yesterday, and he is out for a good period of time, according to Adam Gase. So we'll look at some options for the Jets in terms of their backfield, but honestly, I don't trust the Adam Gase offense. I don't trust what they were doing yesterday. I mean, they were really getting beat up by the Buffalo Bills, and then the Bills kind of took their foot off their throat and allowed them to at least feast in the passing game. But in terms of a running back and a productive running back there, I don't see one anytime soon. Moving on, Devonta Parker left the game yesterday with a hamstring injury, something that he dealt with for the entirety of Week 1. And we kind of knew leading up to the week that he could potentially deal with that. So that's something unfortunate, but it happens. Michael Thomas, dealing with a high ankle sprain as of right now, got rolled up on a little bit yesterday in that game. But as he said multiple times, he's willing to play on it, and he has played on injuries as such before, so he should be good to go. I mean, typically you want to take a week off and then see how you feel, but I think Michael Thomas is a tough guy. He'll probably play through it. Another player with an ankle injury, Duke Johnson, on Thursday night dealt with one of those. He'll, probably be monitored as the week progresses. Another player, Henry Ruggs, who was having a pretty good rookie, breakout game right out the gate against the Carolina Panthers, dealing with an undisclosed leg injury as of right now. I don't have any other details on that. Boston Scott left the game in the third quarter. Many of us who started Boston Scott hoping that he would have some upside this upcoming week against the Washington football team, unfortunately left the game with a undisclosed injury that they are not kind of giving us details on. Hopefully he's healthy and ready to play, and or Miles Sanders is ready to play this week because because Philadelphia really lost sight of their objective, and without a consistent running game, were an absolute mess. It allowed defenders to pin their ears back and sack Carson Wentz 8 times on Sunday. So that's unfortunate, but we'll see how that goes. Moving on to the tight end position, David Njoku is going to the IR with an injury, and George Kittle, as of right now, according to Kyle Shanahan, head coach of the San Francisco 49ers. He is on an iffy scale. He had a little bit of a knee issue. It kind of looked like he hyperextended his knee in the wrong direction. So obviously that's a scare, but he was able to play 61 of the 62 offensive snaps. He still came back and played fine, but he's a tough guy. He could play through stuff like that. I'm just keeping my eye out on that. Jordan Reed would be his replacement if, in fact, George Kittle is the missed time. Moving on. A couple stats that I wanted to mention prior to week 1. Kyler Murray, Josh Allen, and Cam Newton all led their team in rushing yards. They also all had rushing touchdowns this week. So their respective running back, Kenyon Drake, Zach Moss, Devin Singletary, and then Sony Michel, James White, they all struggled because of that. Moving on top of that, another statistic from the quarterback position, Aaron Rodgers had an incredible week 1 against Minnesota. He put up 30.76 fantasy points in a 4-point per passing touchdown format. Last season, in the 2 games that he played against Minnesota, he only put up 23.7. So he was absolutely incredible yesterday. Something to kind of look out for. Maybe the resurgence of Aaron Rodgers now that you take a first-round quarterback. He's coming out and he's dropping teams on their heads. Another quarterback that had a great performance yesterday, Russell Wilson, had an 88.6 passing completion percentage against the Falcons secondary. I mean, an absolute incredible game. He had just as many passing touchdowns as he had passing incompletions. That incredible stat. And they didn't really run the ball very much. So again, they let Russell Wilson dominate the defense. Another stat, speaking of having more passing touchdowns than incompletions, Gardner Minshew was 19 for 20 passing yesterday against the Indianapolis Colts as he led the Jacksonville Jaguars on a victory. Great performance, 3 passing touchdowns, 0 interceptions. Only had 173 passing yards, but all in all, very efficient quarterback play from Minshew. A couple stats that I also wanted to mention prior to getting into the week 1 running back targets. Last season, in week 1, there were 5 100-yard rushers at the running back position in 2019. This past season, only 1, and it was Clyde Edwards-Helaire who did that on Thursday night. Not another running back surpassed 100 rushing yards on the ground. Interesting stat. Moving on. At the wide receiver position this year, only 12 wide receivers / tight ends had over 100 receiving yards this week. The year before, in 2019, 22 players accomplished that. Again, another big gap of difference. And then at the quarterback position, quarterbacks that threw and completed 2 passing touchdowns plus were 13 this year and 17 the year prior. So again, there was an overall level of productivity dropped in comparison to last season. But again, we have to expect that because there was no preseason. It's been a very awkward offseason and something to kind of keep our eye out on. A couple more things like Michael Thomas having a flub game. That is just, you can't anticipate that. Christian McCaffrey only having 4 targets. Prior to yesterday, he only had 4 or less targets in a game, 6 out of the 48 total games he's played in his entire career. It's very rare to see that, and hopefully that doesn't continue to occur. Same thing with Austin Eckler. The fact that he had 1 target and 1 reception it's mind-blowing. I don't understand what they're doing with that offense. He had just as many targets and or receptions than the 4th string running back of the Patriots, and I guarantee you, many of you don't know who J.J. Taylor is. That's just a fact of the matter, and it's crazy. But either way, week 1 was crazy. We move on. We don't panic. I know it's overreaction Monday, but we are going to continue to go towards week 2 with a positive mindset and hope that everything rebalances itself out. Don't panic. Don't, lose your minds. Perhaps look for some trades if people are undervaluing players. But moving on, let's talk about some week 2 waiver wire targets, waiver wire running back targets specifically, starting off with my number 1 running back target, Nyheim Hines. Nyheim Hines, as of right now, an incredible target because of what we were able to see out of him just this Sunday. I mean, the fact that he came out and in the first drive, yes, they started with Marlon Mack. But eventually, Nyheim Hines started to get a couple carries. He started to get some work in the passing game. And then all of a sudden, we see him fall into the end zone for the first Sunday touchdown of the week on NFL Red Zone. Yesterday, Nyheim Hines produced a pretty good stat line. 7 carries for 28 yards in a rushing touchdown, 8 targets, 8 receptions, 45 receiving yards, and a receiving touchdown. Had over 20 fantasy points, played 53% of the snap share. And as of right now, is the Austin Eckler of that offense. Has incredible value, should probably be the number 1 player taking off the waiver wire this week at the running back position. A guy that honestly, going forward, even though Jonathan Taylor is a very capable receiving back, I think he had 6 targets, 6 receptions for 60 some odd receiving yards. Nyheim Hines is going to continue to be used. because the game script is going to allow him to have a presence in that offense. And on top of that, like an Eckler, can still be valuable with a dominant first and second and even third down back on roster, because they're both going to get great productivity out of Rivers, just targeting them and allowing them to get opportunity. Either way, that is the first option there. Moving on, we have ourselves Malcolm Brown. Now, I like Malcolm Brown a lot. Don't get me wrong. He had an incredible week 1 against the Dallas Cowboys defense that honestly is worth noting. Like, he played 60% of the snaps, had total of 21 touches, 18 on the ground, 4 targets for 3 receptions through the air, 2 rushing touchdowns, had a pretty good yard per carry average against this defense, and going forward probably has this job. And in this upcoming schedule, is probably going to be asked to continue to do what he's done in week 1. And to be honest, a lot of his productivity was led by the fact that this offensive line for the Rams much improved and was dominating that defensive line of the Cowboys last night on Sunday Night Football. That being said, I think Malcolm Brown could potentially be owned in your league already. I was stashing him in a couple of my leagues because, again, there was whispers of him potentially being the starting running back of that team. Even though Akers had 15 total touches, Malcolm Brown probably going forward is still going to be the starter until otherwise noted, and could be a very valuable prospect. Our number 3 option for the waiver wire running back targets as of right now is Joshua Kelly, UCLA rookie running back for the Los Angeles Chargers. Now, Joshua Kelly came in late in that game, and though he didn't play very much, what was it, 24% of the snap share, Joshua Kelly came in, 12 rushing attempts, 60 rushing yards, and a rushing touchdown as he helped lock down that second half and helped win this game, to be honest, because Tyrod Taylor was doing no favors for this offense. Joshua Kelly came in and was the staple of this offense. Now, with Justin Jackson's injury as of right now, Joshua Kelly's going to be asked to do more and more. With Austin Eckler, even though as efficient as Austin Eckler was in the running game, over 4 yards per carry, wasn't really being given the opportunity down on the goal line, Joshua Kelly took advantage of that. And if he could be the Melvin Gordon of this offense going forward, could have a great value in fantasy, in my opinion. Again, their upcoming schedule is really not that difficult. Sure, they play against the defending champs in week 2, but if you can keep him on your roster as a viable bench guy that could eventually maybe produce and become a starter and or flex option for your team, I think Joshua Kelly is not a bad guy to go after this week. Moving on, we have ourselves Adrian Peterson as the number 4 option this week for the Detroit Lions. Now, Adrian Peterson, I didn't know what to expect from him. He came in and was signed to this team just a couple, weeks ago, and it really was kind of a shock that the Detroit Lions of all teams, with Kerryon Johnson and DeAndre Swift, would go after an Adrian Peterson. That being said, Adrian Peterson was incredible. Played 31% of the snaps, but when he was playing, he was given the ball every time. 14 rushing attempts for 93 rushing yards, 3 targets, 3 receptions. Those kind of numbers, you just can't substitute for anything. 17 touches in week 1. In an offense that he's very new to, but is finding himself value in. Now, I know DeAndre Swift was getting involved in the passing game, and hopefully when he's fully healthy can get more involved there. He unfortunately dropped the receiving touchdown that would have won the game for the Lions. I still think that Adrian Peterson is probably going to be the early down guy now that they've established that. So it'll probably be AP early, DeAndre Swift in the third down work, and then you have yourself Kerryon Johnson as a buffer every now and then. But Adrian Peterson definitely has value based on what he was able to do yesterday against the Chicago Bears, and going forward could be of value. Moving on, we have ourselves Chase Edmonds, my number 5, on hand. Chase Edmonds, despite Kyler Murray leading the team in rushing yards, Kenyon Drake also getting himself pretty good work in the running game and having a rushing touchdown, Chase Edmonds was used and found actual success against this 49ers defense. Again, Chase Edmonds is not only just a handcuff at this moment in time for Kenyon Drake, he honestly was getting himself involved, played himself 34% of the snaps, 6 rushing attempts for 26 rushing yards, 5 total targets that led to 3 receptions for 19 yards and a receiving touchdown. The touchdown really made his week, but if he can have this kind of value just as the second string running back of the team, imagine the kind of productivity he can have if in fact he's starting. Again, this is another note to make sure you're handcuffing your running backs. Again, if you are a Miles Sanders owner, you wanted to have Boston Scott. If you are going to have Kenyon Drake, you need to have Chase Edmonds, Alexander Mattison with Dalvin Cook. Make sure you handcuff running backs, whether they're yours or not, because they could be of value going forward. Now we have ourselves at number 6, James Robinson. And though I didn't really know what to expect from James Robinson, because I know Chris Thompson's in that offense, and they probably were going to be down a lot of points. That wasn't the case. The Jacksonville Jaguars played great, and so did Robinson, respectively, for what he was given the opportunity to do. 68% of the offensive target, 68% of the total offensive snap share in said offense. Had himself 16 carries for 62 yards, got himself 1 reception for over 20 receiving yards yesterday. Overall, wasn't a bad player. He could have been an easy flex play, but we're going to have to keep an eye on him, keep him monitored. He, as of right now, is the starting running back of the team, playing nearly 70% of the snaps. Keep an eye on him, keep him on roster, go after him potentially if you need RB depth going forward. Okay, we have our next number 7 is Peyton Barber. Peyton Barber is interesting. 17 total carries, 29 rushing yards, 2 rushing touchdowns. He's a vulture, and that's what he used to be for the he was used more as an actual running back with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, but for the Washington football team, as of right now, with their inexperience at running back with Bryce Love, Antonio Gibson, Peyton Barber seems to be the guy that they're just going to try to give as many touches to plow, the early down work, and then eventually bring in the change of pace back like Gibson to at least have a little bit more of an advantage while defenders are tired. But Peyton Barber found himself in the end zone twice, falling in. But again, it just depends. If he's going to play as much as he did, 41%, and get 17 touches, that's something that we have to keep an eye on, because if he's going to continue to get that many touches in a game, he's going to have value eventually. He'll break off runs in easier matchups. Again, Philadelphia is a pretty tough defense up front in their defensive line. We have ourselves at number 8, Jerrick McKinnon. Jerrick McKinnon is similar to Chase Edmonds, is the backup running back, but in the committees per se. He's probably the most talented receiving back of this team, but with Raheem Mostert, Tevin Coleman getting more and more work themselves in the passing game, it's kind of diminished Jerrick McKinnon's potential value. But over time, as he continues to be healthy, find himself some rhythm, this is the first game he's played in, since 2018? It's been quite some time for Jerrick McKinnon's journey. Hopefully he'll be healthy and ready to go as we continue throughout the season, because again, he will be asked to do more and more with the struggles of this offense, not really being able to find a receiver that they want to continue to funnel target as everyone continues to deal with injuries there. So Jerrick McKinnon, another option on hand. And the last option I wanted to mention is number 9, Devonta Freeman. As of the injury news that I've heard today, there have been a couple of teams that are interested in the services of Devonta Freeman. As of right now, the report I read was that 4 teams are talking to him and he's deciding between the 4. So he's ready to come back. He could be of value if he goes to a team like the Eagles or the Jets or something of that extent. Maybe the Dolphins. I don't know where he's going to land, but there are teams that are in need of service at the running back position. Freeman could definitely add that to them. And if he's healthy, he is a talented back and potentially a 3-down back because of his ability in the passing game. So that is the last option at the running back position. These are my week 2 running back targets for the waiver wire. Again, rankings are subject to change, and rankings are always at that position subject to change, because it just depends on what you expect these players to do. I expect them to be as productive as they are in this specific order. They're going to be relied upon in specific order, but either way. Okay, so we move on to our week 2 wide receiver waiver targets on hand. We have 9 players, maybe a little bit more. We have 10 players that we're going to talk about. I kind of fit them in. But we start off with Anthony Miller. Now, Anthony Miller was one of my hidden gems this week because I knew that against Detroit would have a pretty good time. This upcoming week plays against the New York Giants. Again, he's a player that's not owned in very many leagues. I think he was still sitting in the 50-60 range in terms of overall ownership. In your league, he's probably taken, but you want to might as well just go check, because again, he is a valuable prospect in the offense, considering they have pretty easy matchups on hand. Trubisky, even though he struggled for majority of the game, was eventually able to find Anthony Miller, find himself a little bit of a groove in the offense. Again, Miller yesterday, 6 targets, 4 receptions for 76 yards and a touchdown. Had himself a pretty good game at the end of it all. But again, if in fact we get Nick Foles in that offense sooner rather than later, Anthony Miller continues to gain value. And hopefully against the Giants could have himself a pretty good game. Moving on. We have ourselves Sammy Watkins at number 2. I told myself on Thursday that I wouldn't include Sammy Watkins because he's done it before, where he has an incredible week 1 and then just is incredibly inconsistent for the rest of the season. So I'm going to suggest him because, again, 9 targets, 7 receptions for 82 yards and a touchdown. That is something we have to pay attention to, because if in fact this team is going to continue to use him and utilize him in their passing game, then again, he's going to have value. But take this with, very precautionary measures. do not just grab Sammy Watkins and try to immediately throw him into your lineup because he has screwed people in the past, myself included, on a weekly basis with his incredible inconsistency. So let's play it by ear. Let's kind of take it easy. Let's see what he's capable of in week 2 against the Los Angeles Chargers, and then we'll proceed going forward. But again, a great option because he's associated with one of the best offenses. But again, they still have Robinson and Mecole Hardman that are going to get receptions and going to take value from him over time. We'll just have to wait and see how it all transpires. Our next selection on hand was Robby Anderson as another great player that 8 targets, 6 receptions, had over 100 yards, 115 exactly, in a receiving touchdown. Robby Anderson came over from the Jets, and we thought to ourselves, where is he going to fit within an offense where DJ Moore, Curtis Samuel, where both guys were the top 36 wide receivers in a half PPR scoring format last year. You have McCaffrey catching the ball a bunch. Now, McCaffrey didn't catch the ball a bunch yesterday. And neither did DJ Moore, neither did Curtis Samuel, to be honest. And Robby Anderson, of the group, played the best. He's always been a deep ball receiver, and even yesterday against the Raiders, caught himself a deeper pass downfield in which, even being held, caught the ball, and then the safety missed the tackle. He's gone, touchdown, over 115 yards in a touchdown. Robby Anderson has value there. Plays against Tampa Bay this week. I know Tampa Bay really held Michael Thomas down to pretty much producing nothing. But again, Emmanuel Sanders on the other side of the field produced. So what do they do this week? Maybe DJ Moore gets locked down on the other side of the field. Robby Anderson could end up stringing himself together another good week here. Just keeping an eye on him, and another wide receiver you could throw on your bench and have depth with. Our next player on hand is Russell Gage. Now, Russell Gage, as a wide receiver target going into week 2, shouldn't really be a surprise because of the wide receivers that I've mentioned so far. He's had the most targets thus far this season. Had 12 targets for 9 total receptions and 114 receiving yards. A lot of that had to do with the game script, of course, because again, the Falcons were down big. Matty Ice had to come back. He threw for over 450 passing yards, really set up Russell Gage, set up Calvin Ridley and Julio Jones for success. Russell Gage pretty much fills into this wide receiver 3 slot where Mohamed Sanu was producing over the last couple of years. But again, Russell Gage played 70% of the offensive snaps. They played a lot of 3 wide receiver sets, and that in itself is pretty promising going forward. We saw him produce very well last season when Calvin Ridley went down with injury and or Julio Jones went down with injury. For a guy that comes in as a wide receiver that can step up on a weekly basis, again, in an offense that's associated with throwing the ball as much as they are and the success that they find there, Russell Gage could be another great option going into this upcoming week. All right, our next player on hand, or players on hand, reside from the same team. And it's a little bit of a mixture between Allen Lazard and Marquez Valdes-Scantling. Now, I kind of combine these 2 players because I'm not 100% certain as to who is going to be the better overall player in said offense. Now, both of them were as inconsistent as one another last season, but they both happened to produce very well in week 1. Now, statistically, we had Allen Lazard play 87% of the offensive snaps, which makes me lean in his direction. But that being said, had 19 rushing yards, had 4 targets, 4 receptions, and 63 receiving yards, and a touchdown. A great overall week. Great productivity, played the game for majority of the time. Great to see. Marquez Valdes-Scantling, on the other hand, played only 54% of the offensive snaps, but had 6 targets, 4 receptions, 96 yards, and a touchdown. Caught a deep ball for a touchdown, and a great catch on that. I don't know between the 2, whether Allen Lazard or Marquez Valdes-Scantling, who's going to be the number 2 wide receiver of this offense, but I guess it's just a matter of time. As of right now, I'd probably lean towards Allen Lazard, considering the snap count. Sure, he had less targets, but he was still getting more and more opportunity. If you're on the field, more routes run will potentially lead to more opportunity. So I think both of them are great options if, in fact, Aaron Rodgers is going to stay as on fire as he was. But all in all, should be good going forward. Our next player on hand is Mike Williams. Now, Mike Williams had a lot of opportunity yesterday, despite being questionable all week long with an injury. Mike Williams still showed up, had 9 targets, 4 receptions for 69 total yards. Honestly, could have caught a couple extra of those if it was not for the safety of the Bengals coming over the top and cracking him a couple times. I think if, in fact, Tyrod Taylor played better, Mike Williams ends up playing very well yesterday and has himself potentially a touchdown on top of that. So, Mike Williams going forward, I don't know how long Tyrod Taylor is going to be the quarterback for, but hopefully the shorter the better because he was absolutely terrible yesterday. Mike Williams, again, isn't very much owned in many leagues because of the injury issue. I think it's about 40-some-odd%. could be a good option to just stash on your bench for upcoming weeks. He played 78% of the snaps. So again, he is their number 2 wide receiver, and going forward, could be of value. Our next option on hand is Willie Snead. Now, Willie Snead, based on just purely being associated with Lamar Jackson, is getting this little boost to the number 7 spot, because the fact that Willie Snead played 66% of the offensive snaps, but only had 4 receptions on 4 targets for 64 yards and a touchdown. I think Willie Snead's value is just based purely on when he gets a touchdown. Is he going to get a touchdown this upcoming week? They play against Houston. Are they very capable in giving him the opportunity to score a touchdown? Absolutely. Could it happen? Why not? Willie Snead, even though he played a little bit less than Miles Boykin, still played more snaps than Marquise Brown, and could potentially be like the number 2 wide receiver of this team, continues to get, those touchdowns. I mean, last year had 5 receiving touchdowns. If that number goes up, he could see more and more fantasy value and reliability. So just kind of keeping an eye on that. Willie Snead's that option. Our next option on hand is number 8, Parris Campbell. Now, a lot of you were mentioning Parris Campbell. Andrew, should we think about grabbing him? What's your thought process? I really thought that this team would run the ball heavily yesterday, and then even at the very most, T.Y. Hilton and Jack Doyle will be utilized. I didn't expect, Parris Campbell to play the most snaps amongst all wide receivers on the Colts, 82% exact, 2% more than T.Y. Hilton, and have the most targets with 9 targets and 6 receptions for 71 yards. Again, that's more targets than even Nyheim Hines, and Nyheim Hines was a magnet yesterday from Phillip Rivers. So again, Parris Campbell utilized greatly, and hopefully, I know he dealt with injury last year, could have a comeback season this year and put up some production. He's my number 8 option this week. Moving on, we have ourselves our number 9 option, Scotty Miller. Now, Scotty Miller, it was close. I have a couple other options. We'll mention them after, but Scotty Miller wasn't terrible yesterday. 6 targets, 5 receptions, played 61% of the snaps, had 73 receiving yards. Mike Evans was a non-factor yesterday. Sure, he caught a touchdown, but was a non-factor ultimately because outside of, that one catch for a touchdown, he just didn't do anything. He was just a distraction on the field. So if Mike Evans is going to miss time or is going to be like that, potentially Scotty Miller could fill in, have himself some opportunity, get some yardage. Being inside of a role within a Tom Brady offense, sitting in the slot position, is always going to pay dividends. So I think Scotty Miller is a guy that we need to keep our eye on. Outside of him, I know that Laviska Shenault played well for the Jaguars. That is another option we got to keep our eye on. N'Keal Harry, that's another guy that I could have potentially put on this list, but I decided not to because I know he could have scored yesterday too. He fumbled out of the back of the end zone for a touchback. Very unfortunate. Could have definitely scored. Another option that we keep our eye out on. But they play against Seattle this upcoming week, and that's a tough matchup. So we go ahead and we move on to our next option on hand. So starting off with our number 1, we have ourselves Dallas Goedert. Now, Dallas Goedert as a week 2 tight end target is an automatic because I've been talking about Dallas Goedert all week because, again, or even all off season, the wide receiver position for the Philadelphia Eagles is banged up. They don't have a full-powered receiving core. On top of that, with Miles Sanders getting injured, now Boston Scott getting injured, and them not really having a productive running game, it's kind of led them to having to use these 2 tight end sets at a premium, and Dallas Goedert is really being able to take advantage of it. Yesterday had 9 targets, 8 receptions for 101 receiving yards and a receiving touchdown. It's really throwing a wrench into the not trade talks, but the contract negotiations of Zach Ertz. Zach Ertz is trying to get himself another contract, and Dallas Goedert's making it real difficult for him. But again, Dallas Goedert, an incredible performance, was the number 2 tight end in week 1, only behind Mark Andrews by a slight margin. But again, Dallas Goedert should be great going forward. Plays against the Rams this upcoming week. I expect him to be perfectly fine there. We move on to our next option on hand, TJ Hockenson, one of our hidden gems from this past week that actually produced. I mean, goodness, some of them really didn't. But TJ Hockenson on hand yesterday did what I expected him to do. He was utilized down in the red zone like they want to do. They want to turn him into that Jimmy Graham of this offense. Without Kenny Golladay there, Marvin Jones did struggle because he was getting majority of the number 1 coverage. But TJ Hockenson, 5 targets, 5 receptions, 56 receiving yards and a receiving touchdown. Played 64% of the offensive snaps. That's fantastic. Going forward, again, he has some easier matchups in the upcoming schedule. I think this upcoming week he takes on Green Bay, but then the following week plays against the Cardinals. I like those matchups, and I think TJ Hockenson could be a value going forward. Our next option on hand is number 3, Greg Olsen. Greg Olsen in this offense. I mean, we knew that Seattle wanted to use the tight end position, but we didn't know if Greg Olsen or Will Disley would be the starting tight end and or getting the work. Well, that was pretty much established. Greg Olsen played 66% of the offensive snaps, 4 targets, 4 receptions, 24 receiving yards, and a touchdown. Great numbers. Again, the touchdown really saves his week because outside of that touchdown, he's a 4.4 Andy. And, what are we supposed to do there? We can't really play that guy. So we keep an eye on Greg Olsen. For those of you who lost Blake Jarwin, you could potentially pick up him if, in fact, you're interested in the matchup against the Patriots this week. But another one of these options. A couple of these other options, Jimmy Graham at my number 4 spot. Jimmy Graham was actually really productive despite not really... I didn't know what he was going to end up doing because Mitch Trubisky has not used the tight end position before very much. They brought in Trey Burton a couple years back. He ended up just being a flub. Jimmy Graham played 80% of the offensive snaps. Great number. 7 targets. Awesome. Had 3 receptions. Had a receiving touchdown. Could have had 2 receiving touchdowns. His second receiving touchdown fell short. He came to the 1-yard line and fell just ever so slightly short of scoring 2 touchdowns yesterday against the Lions. Honestly, not a bad performance from him. And going forward, if they gain more confidence with Jimmy Graham and Trubisky continues to look in his direction as a red zone threat, could be a great option. Moving on, we have ourselves Logan Thomas, who many of you, again, I'll admit, a lot of you down in the comment section have been telling me, Logan Thomas, Andrew, keep an eye out for Logan Thomas. And boy, did he end up coming out and performing. Besides the fact that he had 4 receptions, 37 receiving yards, and a touchdown, it's the 8 targets that I wanted to pay attention to. It was a 74% snap share that he had yesterday that on top of that makes him that much more valuable. If they're going to be in 11 personnel sets, he's going to also block and be a receiving option in that offense and score touchdowns. My goodness, Logan Thomas, welcome. Because, hey, I thought about it, guys. You guys have been saying it all off season. I just really didn't pay attention to it because I thought to myself, there's a lot of other good tight ends. And again, he kind of throws his name into the hat. If he doesn't score that touchdown, isn't as relevant, but hopefully can be more and more productive as the weeks go on. The last option on hand for the tight end position is O.J. Howard, and I wanted to mention O.J. Howard not because Gronkowski performed badly, but because if in fact Gronkowski is going to be covered by the best coverage corner or safety that they want to put on him, O.J. Howard is going to be allowed to run freely at times, and that's what he did yesterday. That's why Tom Brady had to continue to look in his direction because despite everything, really Gronkowski wasn't a factor yesterday. And if O.J. Howard, a younger, more athletic tight end at this moment in time, is going to be fed more targets from Tom Brady, he could be very valuable going forward. So I throw that name into the hat going into week 2. Starting off with our quarterback targets for this upcoming week, we have ourselves Jimmy Garoppolo. Now, though he played very poorly in my opinion, 19 for 33 passing, 250 passing yards, 2 touchdowns, sure. He didn't end up giving his team the best opportunity to win, but he plays against the New York Jets this upcoming week. If you need a streaming quarterback, the Jets defense, in my opinion, just really couldn't hang with the Buffalo Bills. And I think Jimmy Garoppolo, if, George Kittle's probably healthy, Brandon Ayuk's healthy, they could be far better this upcoming week and could turn it around potentially. So we throw Jimmy Garoppolo's name into the hat again. One of his targets towards Raheem Mostert went for a 70-yard touchdown. So a lot of his yards and productivity was off of one play. One of his touchdowns was a one-play bomb. And I know we have to give him the benefit of the doubt that he will improve, but just keep an eye out on Jimmy Garoppolo. I think he could end up having a good week against the Jets, but outside of the Jets matchup, could be a kind of risky play. Our next option on hand is Ryan Tannehill, and I know he hasn't played on Monday Night Football again, like I mentioned before. These are not including Monday Night Football games because I have not watched them. That's recorded prior. I think Ryan Tannehill against the Jaguars in week 2 could easily produce. He's done it in the past, did it last year. And we know Derrick Henry likes to destroy the Jaguars' run defense. And it's just going to set up play action, an opportunity for an A.J. Brown, Corey Davis, Jonnu Smith to produce in week 2. So Ryan Tannehill is another option there for streamers. Kirk Cousins had himself a decent game. Pretty efficient. 19 for 25 passing, 2 passing touchdowns. Only threw an interception once. I know it's unfortunate, but again, was an efficient quarterback. 250 passing yards. Goes against a defense this upcoming week in the Indianapolis Colts that allowed Gardner Minshew to do whatever he wanted. He only had 1 incompletion. So again, Kirk Cousins could end up being, a 3 passing touchdown kind of guy against that defense and secondary this upcoming week. The next option on him, speaking of Gardner Minshew, plays against Tennessee. I think Gardner Minshew kind of impressed me. And He did that all of last season, surely, but if he can continue to be a guy that's going to score 3 touchdowns with his mobility, his upside, his efficiency there, then maybe he's an option to keep an eye out on. Again, he's probably not someone you're grabbing and starting immediately, but an option nonetheless. Another option on hand, Joe Burrow. He plays on a short week against the Cleveland Browns on Thursday Night Football, and Cleveland looked terrible. Again, like we mentioned before, 2 out of their 3 starting cornerbacks are out. Grant Delpit, their rookie safety, out for the season. They're going to struggle in the secondary, and AJ Green looks like AJ Green. And if Joe Burrow can just find him, they're going to dice up this defense and potentially be able to stretch the field with John Ross, and then down below in the slot position with Tyler Boyd. Joe Burrow is going to learn very quickly, and he had a very nice game-winning drive at the end there. Unfortunately, a penalty stalled their drive, and a field goal that missed from Randy Bullock kind of killed their week. But Joe Burrow was learning quickly and could have himself a pretty good week here in week 2. The last option on hand is Mitch Trubisky. Even though he had a pretty decent comeback, 3 passing touchdowns in the second half, and led them to a victory. It was against a ill-equipped Lions team that, in my opinion, should have won that game. Again, DeAndre Swift dropped the pass. Trubisky plays against the Giants in week 2. A very easy matchup, in my opinion. Trubisky could be of value there. Our last waiver wire targets for week 2 on hand are defenses that we want to keep an eye out on. If the Saints are available, you should be going out and trying to get them as soon as you possibly can. Yesterday, they had 3 sacks, 2 interceptions, a blocked kick, a fumble recovered, a touchdown, and they only allowed Tom Brady and that very high-powered team to score 23 points. I think, again, the Saints, another good option. Keep an eye out on that. Another defense I wanted to keep an eye out on, the Los Angeles Rams. Again, they played very well against the Cowboys. Bend but don't break. Zeke was dominating them, but they did not let them to really take over the game. They only allowed the Cowboys to score 17 points. They had a great pass rush and got after Dak. The reason why I'm talking about the LA Rams is because they play against the Eagles, and the Eagles really allowed Washington to do whatever they wanted. They sacked Carson Wentz 8 times. Imagine what Aaron Donald's going to be able to do, especially if, in fact, they're not able to slow him down early and they get down in the game and Carson Wentz is going to have to pass to come back to win. That could be very dangerous for Wentz. Moving on, we have ourselves the Tennessee Titans. I know they haven't played yet, but I think against the Jaguars, they could really come out and just shellac them very easily. They are a very good run-stopping defense, and their pass rush could eventually get to the quarterback position. So I throw out the Titans as a potential name that you could go after in terms of a week 2 streaming defense. Another defense that I wanted to mention was the Minnesota Vikings. I know they had -4 points in regular standard defensive leagues, but again, if your league mate drops him because he's very upset that the Vikings didn't play well, perfectly fine. You go pick them up because, again, the Vikings are a top 5 or at least a top 12 defense every year for 4 out of the last 5 seasons. Again, they had a rough week 1. They'll rebound. I can assure it. Moving on, we have ourselves the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, they take on the Panthers. If they could stop the run and not allow Christian McCaffrey to get anything on the ground, I really do think they can make it a very tough going for Teddy Bridgewater with their pass rush in front 7. So another option to keep an eye out on. And the last option on hand was the Seattle Seahawks, because they do take on the Patriots Sunday Night Football. And the Patriots didn't look great to me. Cam Newton was able to run the ball pretty effectively and efficiently and score. But in terms of the passing game, I didn't really find them being too, surprisingly good of a team. I really do think that they struggled heavily against the Miami team that really, if in fact had a good quarterback on hand and didn't throw 3 interceptions, they could have won that game. So I throw out Seattle as an option. That's pretty much it. Those are my waiver wire targets going into week 2 of the 2020 fantasy football season. Hopefully you guys enjoyed today's video. Smash that like button if you did. Subscribe to the channel. We'll be doing this every Monday for the entirety of the season, as I usually do. Anyway, thank you everybody for watching. Tomorrow, running back rankings for week 2. Hope you guys join us. I really do appreciate it. Thank you once again. And until next time, I'll see you guys. Peace.